Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Everything Design Show podcast. Today, we have on the show Mr. Jonathan Eng. He is the design director as well as the founder of Oculus Design. So, Oculus Design actually is a strategic design agency in Singapore, and they have been working with a lot of companies, including MFT, a local SME, Global Exchange Office from Nanyang Technological University, SP Group, part of the Singapore Power, and Straits Constructions. And today Jonathan and his organization has been around for 4 years, and he's always trying to help discover his purpose in design. And also, getting us to think about, I think today's conversation is about for us to think about how we, designs, serves this question, to point us in the direction of, finding the light at the end of the tunnel. So, let's have a say hi to Jonathan. Hi, Jonathan. How are you?
Hey, hi, Nicholas, and thank you for inviting me to this talk show. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be invited.
Yeah, no, yes, thank. Jonathan actually is a somebody who was introduced to me by one of our previous speakers, Angela, and I've always been the stand for this show has always been about reaching out to different designers and listening to their journey and what they're passionate about. So I'm always open to listening and hearing the stories of new designers. So maybe Jonathan, could you give us a little tell us a little bit about yourself and also a little bit about Oculus Design. What do you guys do?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, a little bit about the company Oculus. As a matter of fact, we have been around for about more than 18 years. We've come a long way. I've come a long way. And I would say that we bring brand closer to people by solving their business and brand issues. And we do this by strategy, innovation, brand, communication, and digital design. A little bit about myself. Uh, I actually studied engineering, but later on moved over to like design and marketing. Uh, Again, having this business for as long as the company is. And in fact, I enjoy helping others to discover their better self so that they are able to, possibly impact the society.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
my first question, I guess, is, when I guess to educate, myself as well as other people, when you talk about strategic design, what do you define as strategic design, and how does that translate to your customers in that sense?
Yeah. So I think, when we say strategic or we talk about strategy, different people define it very differently. But I think most importantly, strategy is not tactics. Uh, in our case, I think strategy is actually a plan. But to have that plan, you need to have a very clear vision. And that brings me, to mind that, very importantly, whether is it individually or is it from the organization perspective, one need to have a very clear understanding of its cause, which is a vision, right? And the organization's purpose or the individual purpose. And with that, right, we are then able to plan, strategically to move towards this vision.
I see.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
otherwise, a vision becomes a numbers game. And when it becomes a numbers game, we are then it's actually a roll-down effect, isn't it? Because then when it's the numbers game, then you are pushing everybody to work so hard, and then that loses the interest from the whole entire organization. I think this is we're in a new economy. We're no longer in the industrial revolution, and I think whether these management principles can still exist going forward, I think that is actually something that we all have to think about.
Definitely. I mean, I'm sure the different companies that you're working for, um, they all have a purpose, and I think from what I've heard from other speakers or the experiences that I've heard from the industry, is that actually this vision, the strategy is actually something that I think a lot of companies or a lot of businesses don't do, and they just want to get something out of it, like we want a new website, or we want a new brand or things like that, but they don't sit down and think about that vision, that strategy first, which actually is a very, very key important part, right? Do you think so?
Correct. I would definitely agree with you, Nicholas, because I think it also depends on the organization, how they define and what do they define a mission and a vision is. I think many a time, if you see at a lot of listed company or even like some of the companies, their mission statement, seriously, nobody really look at that piece of paper on the wall or even that website because it's just too uh, run of mail and cliche. I think it must be something which is, worth fighting for. A very good example would be like Martin Luther King, right? Where he talk about that one day, the black child and the white child will be able to hold hands together and play in the playground. I think it must be a cause that is worth fighting for. And then how are you going to translate that cause into the communication collaterals that you're going to work on? Which is, I feel that, especially in today's context, right, for some of the companies that we dealt with, there is a very huge gap that needs to be covered.
I see.
Yeah.
Then so actually, I think your message is quite strong. And before I get to that message of, I think that the very clear message that you're trying to sort of talk about, that it's not just numbers driven, like in that sense. I want to go back to what you were mentioning, because it's news to me, because you're saying that you actually started out as an engineer. So I'm curious, how did you start out from becoming an engineer to being in in design, and now we're talking about strategic design, and do you feel that some of your engineering skills have translated across easily, or do you feel that there are some difficulties because you were trained as a designer, as an engineer, and now you're doing design?
Yeah, I think there are some similarities. One thing good about engineering education is, it trains you to have a critical thinking skill set as well as problem skill set. I see some similarity in terms of uh, the skill. Like for example, design is about solving problems, not just solving a China problem, but also to solve an organization problem. I think engineering solve a process problem, but engineering also solve a project problem. So I see some similarity in there. I think the training that I've got in engineering does, bring quite a fair bit of interesting angle when I look at design. I came to know of a few uh, uh, good creative director or even art director that do has a very strong engineering background and then change the course and go into the creative industry. I guess that could also explain the reason why.
Yeah, I do agree. There are people who define designers as problem solvers, and whether we see it as process, or whether it's social problems, or whether it's technological problems. I think that critical thinking, we are trying. I think from an education perspective, we are trying to push for students to have more of that critical thinking, and move away from very prescriptive types of problem solving, in a sense, or very too logical. Not say logical problem solving is bad, but very how do you very process driven, in that sense. Sometimes that process driven problem solving, some kind of thinking may work for some problems, but may not work for all. So it's I think having to get people to think a little bit out of that box, and to try to define those problem statements a bit clearly. I think that's quite useful. And I think we do draw a lot from, I think, design and problem solving methodologies. Even you talk about Lean, Kaizen, Six Sigma, these have come from engineering. You know, they always talk about Toyota's manufacturing plant, right? And how lean transformation has sort of come from there. And yeah, we're taking that into the service industry, hospitality, food and business, hospitals as well. And how design thinking is also moving into healthcare. So actually, yeah, the problem solving, whether the designers want to claim that as their own, I think a bit hard, but I do feel that there are definitely overlaps, and I'm always opening to working with people who come from different backgrounds and different different training backgrounds in that sense, because you're gonna have a mashup of ideas. You're gonna have different perspectives, which will ultimately help to contribute to that problem that's there, right? Yeah. So yeah, we let's let you. I think you when we first started our conversations, you were talking about this thing of unity, and I think from the message that you are talking about with strategic design, not just being purely profit driven, right? But to say that there is you're providing some form of impact, and to a certain extent a social impact as well. How is that easy to not talk, not saying not talk about profits lah, but to move the conversation away from just monetary KPIs in that sense, or profits in that sense. Do you feel that that's something that businesses, your clients, are open to discussing? And do you find that the companies that you've been working for so far, they've been quite receptive of the message that you're talking about, in terms of not just being purely KPI / profit driven in that sense?
Yeah, I guess we can't escape from. There's a few issues that I can actually address. I think we cannot purely take away KPI. I think first and foremost, are we playing a finite game or are we playing an infinite game? I think that is very important. If it's just purely a monetary driven organization alone, then it becomes a finite game. So what happens when that person or that, in the design we always have, how do we measure the success? Do we want to let that measuring of the success KPI derive the solutions that we're going to derive? Do we want to, what happens if that staff, the colleague of ours, has reached that KPI? Are we going to continue to reward that person with more monitoring? I think this is actually a very short-term focus. In that infinite game, we definitely need to have a finite game, which is, for example, a very good example would be like, if you are going to run a marathon, along the way you have checkpoints, and every checkpoint resembles our goal and our KPI. And I think that is very important for every organization to understand. The other aspect that I want to come about is, if an organization is just purely about monitoring, where is this going to go to? Because a person who is results driven doesn't mean that the person makes a good leader. A good leader does not necessarily is the best salesperson in that company, but rather he or she is able to actually train somebody and to be able to achieve its performance. Yeah. So I think it all depends on whether the company is looking at a short-term goal or long-term goal. I believe business exists for a reason, and the business exists in order to have a sustainable business model. So if they want a sustainable business model, they need to look at beyond just, monetary driven. I think that cause, that purpose is far greater, more rewarding than just the monetary gain alone. We certainly need to survive. We certainly need to, have our house, or probably each and one of us need to have our own comfort level of well-being. Certainly we need that, or we call it the economy of well-being. But then, is that all to life? Especially right now, uh, when we are looking at attracting talent, studies have also shown that uh, monetary can only drive to the effect. There are other people that works in the organization more than just monetary gains. And I think these organizations must be ready for them when the talent come on board. Sometimes it's not that we couldn't find a talent. Sometimes it's because the organization mission or the model is just not suitable for the talent. So is the company staying relevant to the needs of our talent, our consumer, or even our user? That is something that an organization need to think about. Again, is every one of us, living a life or just merely a life? I think this is something that we really have to start thinking. I think that self-awareness is really important in today's time and era. Yeah. I hope that answers your questions.
No, it does, because I mean,
Yeah.
I think you put it quite succinctly to say that what I mean, a KPI can be, I mean, we typically sort of calculate KPIs in terms of like a year or maybe half a year, midterm review and things like that, right? So, but I mean, what you, I guess, essentially are saying is that let's not look at it as, we need to earn, $1 million, or the company needs to have $1 million in by this year, right? And I think what you're saying is that we should look at it from a long-term perspective as well, because if you do grow your brand, you do grow your company, you're able to build your clientele, you're able to represent a very clear message, to from a employee perspective, from a customer perspective, that will have an ROI that you may not see directly in the next 6 months, but you're saying that we need to play the long game, because that is that businesses are not short-term investments, right? Businesses are very long-term investments, and whether you see them as investments or whether you see them as a purpose, right? Depending on what type of organization you're running, like in that sense. But I do get. I mean, I think that's the way you put it. I quite like that. You're saying that what is we cannot just. We still need businesses still need to run to be able to provide the well-being for the owners, for the staff members, but I think looking at the long term is also something that's very important. So when you do have your customers come to you, or your clients come to you, let's say potential client is coming to you, just based off your own experience, so based off like when you tell your clients about this and you say, let's look at the bigger picture. We talk about KPIs, but we talk about yes, profit and what we can do for you, but we want to look at it from a more of a long-term perspective. What do you feel what do you feel is the what are the comments, or what are some of the perspectives or that your clients or your customers have responded to you so far? Has this message of looking at it from a not a short-term KPI, profit-driven perspective, does that turn customers away, or are they quite open to that from your perspective?
Yeah. I think a lot of people, probably in the past or even now, they always felt that customers is king. I think that I agreed in a certain way. I think we also do not want to drive businesses away. So we would really have to, of course, some people might say that the customer's value and our values must be matchable. But I guess it all depends on individual organizations. There is no one solution that fits all. Very importantly is if we look at the case of Martin Luther King, right, or even like Gandhi, you know that this is going to be a long battle. Yeah, it does not mean that if you were to bring across a particular opinion or a message to a client, they will buy it immediately. You need to constantly bring across that message because you believe in that. And because you believe in that, so therefore you have to plan and take some action plans on how are you going to achieve that particular vision of yours. So it is rightfully every organization's role to educate the client in that manner. And if the client doesn't want to take this path, then you got to have a plan B on how you're going to approach it. Yeah, of course, if I am born with a silver spoon, then I can turn down every customers. In this instance, we can't. But which is the reason why it is so important for every organization to be clear on its purpose, to be clear on the cause that they are fighting for. And therefore, they are able to attract the people that is going to work for them and to fight this sustainable better. And therefore, you're also able to attract clients who are seeing what you see and come to you because they believe in what you believe. Yeah, I remember Simon Sinek, right? Simon Sinek wrote a book on why. And I think I remember the message that he bring across is that people don't buy what you do, but people buy why you do. I think this is pretty interesting idea that we all need to understand. Yeah, of course, we have to truly believe in and walk the talk.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's I mean quite inspirational in terms of I think the vision that you have for your own company lah, because it has to, I mean, if you're trying to sell this to your clients as well as a vision, right? Your own company also it has to embrace it, right? And I'm sure yourself and Oculus have been able to maintain that message and that vision throughout as well. So I mean, when now that you have you've been doing this for 18 years with Oculus, and you guys have been working for range of companies, but I guess what do you all do you as an organization internally do you guys do specific things to ensure that you maintain that vision of that vision within the business as well, to maintain those values within the business as well?
Yes, I think we did not start out in our early years when we started the business. We did not start out with a purpose. We started out with a monetary gain, and also a lot more about how this business can actually how do we actually get to know a lot more about ourselves and our limitations through the business. But it's also like probably over the years we felt that something is missing. Are we just going to do every campaign or do every design as it is? Because nothing wrong to be driven by good design. In fact, good design is a given. It's just like Toyota. They can't be going around preaching a message that they say they do quality cars. Toyota quality car is a given, right? And then in today's context, it is a given that you need to have good design. So what we do internally is there's a lot of constant conversation over the last few years as a leader or as any manager in the organization. You need to constantly engage the team, So we have this ritual that we try to have a monthly conversation. Sometimes we try to talk beyond just work alone. I think it is. I think that's how relationship is built. I think we try to look after each other beyond just the concept of project, but about their life, about their family. I think this is very important. That ritual, that culture must be built up internally within the organization. And I think how do we constantly improve the ability of ourselves and improve the ability of everybody So I think the government has been talking a lot about, improving our skill set, improving the skill set, which is good. So internally, there must be an internal training. There must also be external training for the staff so that they can constantly improve their ability and continue to serve the customers. I think that is very, very important. Yeah, rather than just employing a set of people and expect them to just do the job and that's it. I mean, after all, design business is not a manufacturing company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, I mean, design is always about there's a very big human aspect to it. I mean, you talk about design being user driven, and I think that's the human approach, the human touch that comes in, right? And being a company that and I think your message about unity and empathy and these kinds of things, definitely has to be translated and defined throughout your own organization, and then when your clients see it, then they will, oh, okay, I get it, and I also understand that. So I think definitely, like you talk about having to talk about having your monthly meetings, also talking about having the conversations that are also outside of work. You're trying to build friendships or connections with your stakeholders, which is your staff members, as well as your eventually your potential clients as well, right? So I think definitely having that very cohesive
Right.
message, that's definitely very, very important. So I also I wanted to ask, so apart from dealing with these things internally, talk about design being we I think we spoke about how we want to talk about a message of unity, about empathy, about about having a very clear vision, and also designing for a purpose, and designing for social causes in that sense to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Do you all have any pet projects that you all work on that are not client based, that you or you're planning to have
Yes.
down the line, that are more socially driven, and do you all try to do that often?
Mm. Yeah. So which is very interesting. I think talking about socially driven project, yes, that is something that has been coming in my mind for the last 1 year. In fact, I think that's how I get to know Angela, and that's how I get to know you.
Yes, yes.
Uh, yeah, and I think one of my interests would be in the area of development on the younger generation, development on people who are just coming up from the workforce. I think that's very important because that is something that we would like to explore down the road because I believe there are many others who also like to explore. The question here is in today, right? We also have to ask ourselves this question: is like, given a set of skill set that we learn from school, when people come out to work, right, they feel that a sense of disparity, they feel a sense of inequality. Why is that so? Is it because our learning is not being personalized? I think that's something that we ask ourselves these questions. Yeah, but certainly I think there's something that we are looking forward to in terms of some of the social project. The other aspect that would like to also mention is that it's just like going to war, right? I mean, of course, today we don't have the climax. Yeah, but it's just like going to war. So when we go to war, we are fighting to protect our family. I'm sure we're fighting to protect our family. But of course, not as fierce. But of course, there is a mission. And then how do we fight that? Together with a family. And that's where unity comes in. You look after your colleagues, or I would say colleague, you look after your friends or your bunkmates beside each other, and you are willing to fight for them because there is love, there is connection with them. You're willing to fight for them when you go to war, but this is not something that is built within that uh, 3 months BMT. That is built over time. That is built is could be even like more than 1 year that you're willing to go together with them because you know each other deeper than who they are. And I think the concept of war, concept of unity, came from the concept of war. A company is like that, right? I mean, if we couldn't find a mission that is we are going to fight, and we couldn't develop or couldn't have people that we're going to fight together, it is going to be a very lonely battle. And I think today, the sense of belonging more than ever is needed in each one of us, which is also the reason why every one of us, or even from design thinking community or even the service design community, everybody are spearheading their own projects because they want that sense of belonging, that want that sense of significance going beyond just success. Because maybe in the past we measure success by the numbers, right? What kind of house do you live? What kind of cars do you drive? I think today we have moved from success to significance. And I think that action of working on some of the social project is able to give them that sense of belonging and a sense of significance. And I think company more than ever should allow everyone or even collectively have that sense of belonging and fight a war that is worth fighting for. Yeah, I think that is something that we have to start defining. Otherwise, when a tough war comes, everybody will be, covering their own head from the shelter, from the bomb shelter, right? Yeah, so that is something very important then, because we don't live in this world alone. Actually, I mean, we exist because as a human, even animals are able to protect their loved ones, right? So likewise for human, I mean, this world is going to be a lonely world if we're going to fight the battle alone. Certainly, we're going to find people that share the same cause and fight together in this war. Yeah, and I think at least, right, we know that we don't, uh, you know, they always say that, you don't count your days, but you make your days count. I think that is very important. Yeah.
You
For
have
that the message.
yeah, no, I do get the message. Actually, I mean, and I wanted to ask you to elaborate on that a little bit more because I think this idea of unity is something that is quite big, right? And today we're recording this, which is on the 4th of August. It's very close to National Day.
Yes, exactly.
And I mean, my wife the other day she asked me, what does it mean to be patriotic to your own country, right? And then I thought about it. It really is about what brings us together as a community, but also it also means that we can and we have those different communities that we we feel that connection with, right? So for us, you and I, we're designers, right? So we're part of this design community, and as this design community, we want to move forward. We don't want to just step on each other's toes and just like keep fighting to say who's more popular, who's more significant in that sense, right? But we want to grow the design community together, educate the general public about us. Maybe you have for those who drive, you have your specific, maybe you've got a Suzuki Swift group, right? But that commonality that you have with these groups of people are quite significant, and you stand for a very common thing. You agree on certain things, certain values, right? And also it's the things that you disagree on, that I think, as a society, as a bigger society, we can also acknowledge those differences, but it's not to say that we acknowledge those differences to just differentiate ourselves from each other for the sake of it, but we are also acknowledging that, hey, there are some things that we agree on or disagree on. We're also from different communities, but I think I do think I think just back to that question, this unity thing, that we can always look at it from different levels, and I think it's really about ensuring that there is a a common message, all right? So you talk about design thinking community, because now I think in the past, maybe what I would do is I would say, oh, that person is sort of maybe my competitor because he is also doing design thinking, right? He or she is also doing design innovation, design workshops and things like that. But nowadays, I the more I think about it, it's actually, no, actually, I mean, I cannot possibly be educating millions of Singaporeans, right? Maybe my podcast is going to reach maybe only maybe 100 people, right? But at least I can reach 100 people on this side. Someone else can reach, another 100 or another 1,000 people on another platform through another connection. So, and I think, it's about embracing that and say that, hey, it's not that your methods are different, and it's not good. You don't follow my method. My method is the correct one. My way of teaching is the correct one. But I think that when and I agree with your point to say that the significance that when we're making shouldn't be a case where we are putting other people down, but we are, I think, drawing on that. So when you talk about service design community or design thinking community or user experience design or UX community, I do feel that the design industry, we have a lot of ego lah. I mean, generally speaking lah. I don't like to say that, but we have there are a lot of big egos in, and it's very part of because it comes naturally for a designer, because you spend so much time designing the work, creating the content, doing the thing that you want. You can't. It's almost like your parent, right? As a parent, your child is always going to be the best. Your son's the most handsome. Your daughter's the prettiest. Things like that. And you can't help it, because that's you already spend so much effort to do the work, and you spend so much time to look after your child in that same way. It's whether you call it ego or whether you call it proud, being proud of your own work, it's just part and parcel of that. So I think, as designers, we do spend a lot of time to create the work that we create, and because we do that, we feel a lot of passion for the work that we do. And I think we need to, rather than look at that passion and say, mine is better than yours, or I'm doing more than you, or it becomes a competition. I hope to see a community in which we are embracing each other and saying that, hey, great job you're doing over there, I'm doing something different here, and let's collaborate, or let's work on things together. Let's share knowledge, let's see how we can reach out to more people together. So I think there is a big potential for the design community, because we are essentially also creative problem solvers, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. So I do agree wholeheartedly with what you're talking about here.
I think actually I resonate with what you are saying, Nicholas. You're right to say that the design industry has always been very ego, right? There's a lot of big ego people around. I think it's nothing wrong. I think there's nothing wrong. But if we let our ego stop us to achieving more and ultimately create an impact, I think that becomes a problem. I think it's good to have a little bit of pride. I think it's good a little bit of pride so that we can actually continue to push ourselves to do better. So I would say that I think the unhealthy competition should be get rid of. But what we want to do is we want to create more healthy rivalry. Because when you have a rivalry, sometimes you see that person's strength is your weakness, and you try to become better. So when that healthy rivalry, because it's healthy, and therefore you continue to push yourself, I think that is something that we should have, because we want to continue to achieve ourselves to become better. But I believe there isn't a cause for the design community to come together, to tap on different disciplines, to tap on different expertise together for that cause. I mean, can you imagine, let's say Singapore is having war right now. Every one of us, we're so angry with each other, right? We step on each other's toes. But when there's a war, we are sure to bound to stay in unity together. And because there is a mission, there is a mission, there is a reason to fight for. We fight for our family. We no longer fight for ourselves anymore. And I also agree with you that we should put away our ego because we are going to have more issue because we are so inward looking. I think it is all right that everybody have their own objective, but most importantly, you know, to have a worth cause worth fighting for, come together and achieve it together. I think that is much more important, and I think the rest will just follow. True. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, yeah. No,
mm,
I mean, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, of course, in war, you have a common enemy, lah, right? You know, me and my neighbor, our common enemy. You know, if we're at war with a different country, it'll be the other country, right?
correct.
You know, so rather than seeing it, I think as a design community, rather than seeing it as, oh, we have a common enemy, I think if we can flip it around and say that, okay, we have a common goal, all right? You know, let's achieve this bigger goal together. Because I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, I think what we're trying to do is we the common thing that I feel that a lot of designers agree on is that we're not given enough credit for the work that designers do.
Mm,
Designers are always under appreciated in the general economy, lah, right? I mean,
yeah.
even now we look at it, you know, the media or the arts world or the design world, you know, there are a lot of people who, you know, there's this whole debate about the whole whether you're essential or non-essential, right? Jobs. Of course, that was essential to that period of that circuit breaker and to a pandemic, right? But in that sense, but I think there's a lot of, I think, anger towards I wouldn't say anger, but it's just a bit of resentment to the general public, because it feels like the general public doesn't understand designers, which is true. I mean, I don't disagree with that, and I can see where all that the energy is sort of coming from. So I mean, so that definitely is something that has been you know, I think a hot topic for discussion for many people. So you know, talking about unity and, you know, common goals. So I guess I wanted to ask you, you know, do you have a goal or a, you know, for yourself, or whether it's for Oculus or your circle of friends, you know, do you have one common goal that you're striving to achieve, you know, in the next few years for yourself, or whether it's for your business, that you think that other people can have the opportunity to come together with you and to work
Yeah.
towards that goal? Do you personally have a goal like that we're talking about? You
Yeah.
know, in a way, like, you know, we talk about, oh, the war, we have one enemy, one common enemy, right? You know,
Yeah.
and us coming together. Do you personally have one goal slash enemy that you are looking for your comrades to come and join you on?
Yeah. Yeah. I think certainly that we have a few goals that we wanted to achieve, individually and collectively within the organization. I think one of the infinite thing that we want everybody to know is that uh, how are they able to discover their better self? Yeah, I feel that that is a very first step. Uh, before we talk about um, the things that they are doing, I think that's very important. And I think also within the organization, how can we continue to help, you know, uh, the design community? Uh, Maybe if I were to stretch a little bit, I think every one of us, we can call ourselves designer or creative. It depends on what you're doing. Uh, Even an engineering or AutoCAD designer is a designer. Yeah. How are we able to actually, you know, um, help them to achieve their goals? I think this is something that uh, is something that we hope to achieve in the next few years. Yeah, yeah, going beyond the busyness of doing campaign, doing design.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Probably we want to design a book that we can call our own.
Mm.
Maybe that's something that we also would like to achieve. Design a book that we can call our own
Yeah.
without any disruption or intervention from the customers.
I think that's a great common goal, because I mean, from an education perspective, right? I'm always constantly trying to help my students say to help define their goals long term as well as short term. And they are trying to, I mean, while they're in school, they are trying to figure their way out, right? There are some students who are very, very astute, and they are very clear in terms of what they want to do. They want to be an illustrator, they want to be a copywriter, and they have very clear goals, right? So those are the students that we don't not say, we don't worry so much about, right? So we know that they're on a straight path, and they know what they're doing, and they're very clear. Their actions are all towards that very clear goal that they have. But I think what you're talking about here is very valuable to, I think, a big percentage of the people that I've been interacting with, which is people who are they're graduating, they have been trained for a certain degree, but they're not really sure, because they see that there are so many different types of jobs that are out there, so many different types of companies that are out there. Where do I want to work? What kind of environment do I want to work in? What kind of environment is good for me? Because we talk about design companies, but there are many different types of design companies, right? Some companies are very KPI driven, very results driven, profit driven. Some are, like you yourselves, with Oculus, maybe a bit more, a people centric, vision driven in that sense, right? Or so the different type of company also is very different. So
Yeah.
helping them to define those dreams, and doing not just the tasks that they want to do, or the jobs they want to do, but also being able to get them to do it in the environments that they are also comfortable with. So I think there's two aspects to that, about this whole, helping designers find their dream jobs. And actually, it's not just about finding the dream jobs. It's actually just about helping them define what those dreams are, right? So I think that's something that's very important.
Yeah, I will agree that, because I think more so than ever in today's context, I think I think designer need to understand business, not just purely design. I think that's when business design comes about. Of course, if we put it very literally, some people might think that business is like yucky, I don't want to touch the numbers. Or, design is about aesthetic. I think we can broaden the context a little bit. I think business, if we talk about business, is about management, and management of self, management of our understanding, defining our dreams. But if we talk about design, I think design over the years have also stretched beyond just craft. I think we are talking about design strategy. Recently I'm reading a book by Thomas Lockwood. It's actually a very old book on design strategy. I think, again, the perceived value, the purchase value, purchase influence. I think these are all very important that designers need to know. I think it's never just about, nothing just about aesthetic alone. I think the aesthetic is something that is a given. You need to have it. Of course, some designers, they may not have the skill set in terms of aesthetic. Then they have to ask themselves, what would be their ability? And they look into their ability, and slowly, move their way up. Yeah. So I think, given the climax of today, it's a really an uphill task for many people beyond just designers. So how can we actually help them to shorten this path? I think that is something that I think educators or even like agency has a very big role to play, so that they can be ready and for the work that is coming. Yeah. Otherwise, I believe there is going to be a very big gap in terms of talent and skills going forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very, good point to sort of make. So, for anybody who wants to, I guess, connect with Jonathan or learn more about Oculus Design, I will have the links to the websites, as well as within the descriptions of the video, and as well as the podcast. Because and I'm sure if you have any questions that came to mind, and you want to connect with Jonathan, please feel free to do so. I'll have some of the links in the description. But yeah, I think that sums up very well what we've been talking about today, right?
Yeah.
Having a very good common vision, for an organization and as well as a business, and ensuring that looking at a long-term perspective, and how that vision or message can also be applied to an individual, right? As well as to on a social context, right? Or community context, especially our design community, right? So our design community, individuals, and I think I think that really sums up quite well today's discussion about how we cannot just look at it as whatever you're trying to do, whether it's your dreams, goals, business, your design work. We can't just really look at just the short term. We need to look at the dream, what is the vision, what is the long-term plan, and what is that strategy that you want to go, what's that strategy you may have, right? And what are the tactics that you will use to get to achieve that strategy and to achieve that goal. So yeah, I mean, I think that's really a good spread of things that we were able to cover today, Jonathan. Was there anything else that you wanted to sort of end off with, to for the listeners or the viewers?
I think that's a very good conversation, Nicholas. I think that should summarize, our topic for today, and I hope everybody get to gain from what we have been talking about today.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for your time, Jonathan. I really appreciate you coming and telling us about your passion as well as your message, for designers as well as businesses. And like I said, if anybody wants to connect with Jonathan, please feel free to do so. I'll have the links to connect with him in the description, as well as to learn more about Oculus Design if you are looking to collaborate with them. So with that in mind, right, thank you very much, Jonathan, again, and we'll see you at the next episode of the Everything Design Show. Thank you. See you.
Sure. Thanks, Nicholas. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. See you. Bye.